Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our Wednesday night class, studying the Parashat Chaye this week. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us and thank tonight's sponsors. Tonight's sponsors are Arno and Esther Sitbon, who are sponsoring tonight's class for the Refuah Shlema and the Besrot Tovot for Suzanne Sultana Batsimi. May she have a speedy recovery in the merit of Reb Heyman, as well as of Reb Pincus. Amen. Next is Joel Goldman is sponsoring tonight's class in honor of his bar mitzvah Parashat Chaye. He just jumped on. Let me repeat that. Okay, so we'll do this sponsor over here. Tonight's class is also sponsored by Miriam Halberstam, who has sponsored tonight's class in honor of our group. Thank you very much. And finally sponsored by Mr. Joel Goldman, who's on. Hi, Joel, who is sponsoring tonight's class in honor of his bar mitzvah Parashat Chaye, and also in memory of his parents. May their neshamas have an aliyah. All the good deeds, the Torah study, and the tzedakah that Joel does, all in their merit. Amen. Ken Yehi Ratzon. With that introduction, we would like to start tonight's class. We're going to start the first part, the great holy words of Rabbi Leib Heyman. So just maybe as a brief introduction, last week was a very busy week in the Torah, a beautiful week, a miraculous week, when finally at the ripe age of 90 for Sarah Imenu and 100 years old for Avraham Avinu, their son is finally born, Isaac. And we spoke about last week the laughter, how everyone laughed. How can it possibly be? Avram laughed, Sarah laughed, everyone who heard about it laughed. And it was truly a beautiful miracle. Now, fast forward 37 years, and that miracle almost seemed to be like a glimpse of paradise, and then it was going to end. When Isaac was 37 years old, God commands Abraham to fulfill his 10th and final test of faith and take him to Har HaMoriah and to slaughter him. So, no, not Har HaMoriah. There's actually no name for that mountain, and that's actually the mountain of the Temple Mount, where the Beit HaMikdash will eventually be. We're not going to get into all that. But God tells him to take him to the top of the mountain and to sacrifice him, to slaughter him. At that moment, Sarai Imenu was approached by Og, Melech HaBashan, and Og tells her, your husband is going to slaughter, sacrifice, murder your one and only son. And because she took that news so bad, she unfortunately passed away. And that leads us to the beginning of this week's Torah portion, where Sarai Imenu passes away at the beginning of this week's Torah portion, and at the end of this week's Torah portion, Avraham Avinu passes away. But I want to focus on the first part of this week's Torah portion, when Sarai Imenu passes away and her husband Avraham tends to her burial needs, the first afterlife experience that the Torah even speaks about. Reb Leib is going to address that. So, putting all that on pause, Reb Leib this evening wants to speak about the eternal bond between a husband and a wife, using the model of Avraham and Sarah. But this not only applies to our first patriarch and first matriarch, but to every single husband and wife. Beautiful insights that we're about to share from Reb Ari Leib. So, according to the Torah, it is incumbent upon a man to marry and have children, to get married in order to populate the world, to get married in order to build a life with his soulmate. Now, a little bit of what I'm going to say now may rub you the wrong way, may be a new concept to you. on one hand, take it literally. On the other hand, if you don't truly understand the concept of a Jewish marriage, I'm going to try to briefly explain it. There could be some loose ends that you may not understand. And instead of just disqualifying the entire concept of it, maybe at the end of class or at another time, we can discuss more about it. In the world that we live in the, how do we call it? It's not that it's a feminine world, God forbid. Neither is it a masculine world, God forbid. But the way that the world is emerging nowadays is, I'm not getting the word. I don't know. It's missing me now. I'll get to it in a moment. But the way the world is nowadays is trying to put everybody, no matter what their race, their color of their skin, their religion, their social status, their gender, all on an equal. Now, it doesn't mean that getting to gender, men or women are greater than one another. Just like it doesn't matter where your social status is or what color your skin is or what your religion is. It doesn't mean one is greater than another. There are just specific roles. I like to put it that way. There are specific roles and duties that each and every human being has in this world. And when it trickles down to Jews and Jews and Jews, and then there's men and women, and then there's Kohanim, Leviim, and Israelim, different social statuses or positions, and then different genders, there are specific roles. The role of a husband, with that introduction, the role of a husband is to marry a woman and to completely take full responsibility of her as his wife. He is to assume that responsibility of providing for her in every single way, physically, spiritually, emotionally, in every way. In Hebrew, when a man assumes this position, this action is an action that's called kiddushin, otherwise loosely translated as betrothal. And we'll get into exactly what that word really means. That is the very first part of every wedding. Every wedding that we go to, the first part of the wedding is the kiddushin. The kiddushin is literally the betrothal. After that is the nisuin. That's maybe the formal wedding part. We normally do that with Sheva Brachot. So with that introduction, the opening statements of the Talmud in Masechet Kiddushin start with, which is the laws of marriage and the way the unit, the union of marriage actually works. The Talmud starts off with a halachic discourse of figuring out a source for a certain question, and the answer for where that source is found is in our Torah portion this week. And that's why we're bringing this concept up. The very first Mishnah in Masechet Kiddushin is a famous Mishnah, says that a woman can be acquired. Now, again, I'm using this word acquire because when a man assumes responsibility over a woman to provide for her in every single way and betroths her, he is now acquiring her. He has to assume full responsibility, whether it's in the positive light or understand, or unfortunately, maybe she's a liability, right? Does she cook well? Is she able to have children and raise them properly? Then for sure that she's a great asset, if you put it that way. On the other hand, if God forbid she's not able to cook well, she can't raise children or can't raise them properly, can't have children, or spends more money than you're able to even make, whatever the case is, she unfortunately falls under a liability. Now, I'm saying this in a very jokey way. Take it light. Don't take it so seriously. Yes, someone who put in, was that my mom? Someone said that you could send her to cooking classes. That's not the only thing. I'm saying it in a light way. But seriously speaking, I'm using the word acquire because that's the word the Mishnah uses and the Talmud uses. And in one way, it's a little bit transactional, but it's way deeper than that, as we're soon gonna get to. I'm being very careful with the words that I choose going through this topic because I don't want to turn anyone off from the bond and the union and the institution of marriage. Nevertheless, the Talmud does say, the Mishnah says, there are three ways for a husband to acquire a woman as his wife. It is either with, I'll say it in Hebrew, kesef, shtar, ubia, either with money, by giving her money, or shtar is with a contract, literally a ketubah, outlining everything he's assuming to do and provide for her. And bia literally means living together, bringing her into his house and living together, also marital relations. That is the three different ways to acquire a woman. So now the very first point in the Talmud asks, where in the Torah do we see as a source that a woman could be acquired through money? So you know what the Talmud answers? The Talmud says we're going to learn a gezerah shava. I'm going to explain you. This may be a little deep for some of you, but this is fundamental Talmudic concepts. There are 13 ways to expound or derive a teaching in our Torah. One of the 13 ways happens to be, as complicated as this may sound, it happens to be one of the easiest of the rules of learning and deriving different laws from the Torah. But one of them is called a gezerah shava. That literally means you're taking a term in this verse, one word, and you are comparing it to the very same word in another verse elsewhere in the Bible, and we're imposing the concept from there to here, and or vice versa. Now, all of these gezerah shavas, as we're going to call this, I guess, connection and correlation based on terminology, we can't come up with ourselves. They're only dictated to us as a transmission based on what Moses received from God and transmitted it to Joshua, and so on and so forth, all the way until it was recorded in the Talmud. So which two terms are we going to correlate over here? We're going to put together the words. Now, I'm going to share it on my screen so you take a look. Okay, so this is the verse. Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 13 is the verse of where we see the Torah says that a man is to acquire or take for himself a wife. It says, Ki yikach ish isha uva elea usnea. This part we're not going to speak about. Well, let's speak about the first part. The first part, if a man takes a wife, this word ikach comes from the root word, 3 letters of Lamed, Kuf, Het, Lakach. Lakach literally means to take, to acquire. Let's go to this week's Torah portion, chapter 23 in Genesis, verse 13. It says, Vaydaber el Ephron beoznei ha'aretz lemor. So what did Abraham do? He spoke to Ephron through intermediaries, and he told him, Achim atalu shema'eni. Says, listen up over here. Natati kesef hasadeh. I'm paying you full amount of money. We know it's going to be 400 silver coins. Kach mimeni. You see the word, same word. Kach from lakach. Vekberat meti shama. What's the verse saying? The verse saying is that Abraham purchased with money the field in Or of Me'arat HaMachpelah, which we're going to speak about. We've all been there. We've all visited that at least once in our lifetime. He purchased that plot of land with money. Since we have this term, kach, and this term, yikach, both meaning to take, to acquire, we see that just as, the Talmud says, just as a field, or in this case, the burial plot was purchased with money, so and acquired that way, so too a woman is acquired to her husband by means of money. Okay, that's the Talmud. That may be the most intricate or difficult piece of tonight's class, so I hope you got it. Okay, just the same way, whether you like it or not, this is how it's transmitted by Moses. The same way, and William may not be liking this at this point, but we're going to make it, we'll sweeten it in a moment. But the same way, the Talmud says, the same way that a plot of land can be acquired with money, a woman can be acquired to her husband via money. Today's wedding works with a ring. We normally use gold ring. Normally it's white gold, but whatever anyone's preference is. A gold ring is the action of money being transferred from the husband to the wife, acquiring her him assuming the first part of responsibility. Now, having said this, it's not by chance, Reb Leib says, that the verb used by the Torah for man to acquire his wife, of yikach, to take, is the same verb, you're going to like this, the same verb that God used in his original formation of woman from man. Take a look at your screen. Where is it? This is in Genesis chapter 2, verse 21. This is when God was forming Chava from Adam. Vayapel Hashem Elokim tardema la'adam vayishan. Hashem caused Adam Arishon to fall into a deep sleep. Look at the word. Vayikach achat mitzal otav vayskor basar tachtena. God took, same word, God took one of his sides, his ribs, and he filled it in and closed it up with flesh. Reb Leib says there's no coincidence that the same verb that God took or created woman with is the way she is, with that same verb acquired by her husband later on. This comes to teach, it's a very deep concept. This comes to teach us that when a man gets married, what he's doing is he's going and he's replacing that which he was missing when he was created. He's kind of taking her, but more than taking her, he's taking her back. Now, of course, it wasn't me. I wasn't the one who had a rib removed from me. It was Adam Arishon. So, of course, it's just metaphorical. But it's a very deep concept that when a husband acquires a wife and marries her, he's not just taking anybody. He's taking his soulmate. He's taking who was allegedly taken from him, separated from him, and then there is a union. Now, this method I explained of taking one verse from one place to another and putting the two together. In this case, we have to, Reb Leib asks, why specifically, out of all places in our Torah where the word yikach or lakach, to take or to acquire, is, why is it specifically in this case of Avraham Avinu purchasing not only just land, a burial plot for his wife? Why is it this case, this episode, that the Talmud uses to draw a correlation that indeed a woman may be acquired through money by her husband to be betrothed to him? This is Reb Leib's question. He gives three fascinating answers, each delving a little deeper. The first, I think, is a little more simple. He says the connection is, as we just said, that indeed a husband is the same way that a husband is taking back that which was missing from him, i.e. that rib, that side of him. So if we look, how was man created in the first place? Humanity. Humanity was created from the dust of the earth. And then where do we go back after we pass away? We go back to the ground. So Reb Leib says, the same way that a man is taking back that which is his, so to the ground takes back that which was taken from it. You understand the correlation? And if we look in the verse, he proves it from Genesis chapter 3, verse 19, until you return to the land. Why that? Because this is when Adam was decreed that he's going to pass away. Why to the land? Ki mimena lukachta. You were taken from. There we go. You have the same verb, lakach. You were taken from the ground. Ki afarata velafarta shuv. You're dust, and you came from dust, and you're going to return to dust. So that's the first correlation. The first correlation is that which was taken is being returned. It's like a take back. So the woman is being taken back to her husband, and any human being that passes away, i.e. the burial plot, is being taken back to the ground from which they were created. First and simple explanation. Next explanation, Reb Leib says, if we pay attention to Me'arat HaMachpelah, that's the cave where our patriarchs were buried, literally the double cave, and we'll explain why in a moment. That cave was promised to Avraham Avinu during the Brit Ben Abetarim. He promised him that he was going to have that and own it. Don't take my word for it. We see Genesis chapter 15. Let's put this here. Copy. Genesis chapter 15, verse 18. Bayomahu karat Hashem et Avram berit lemor. On that day, Avraham Avinu and God, they formed a pact, a covenant. Lizarachan atati et haaretz hazot, the entire land, from Nehar Mitzrayim ad Anar Agadol Nehar Perat, from the river of Egypt all the way to the Euphrates River. That includes, according to all opinions, Me'arat Machpelah. Comes Reb Leib and asks an amazing question. If it belonged to him, because Hashem promised it to him, why would he be paying for it? Why did he not only pay for it, he paid good money for it, 400 silver coins. It belonged to him. Comes Reb Leib and explains, you know why he did so? He did so that nobody would ever come and claim, this is not yours. You took something which wasn't yours. So to be sure, Avraham Avinu wanted his wife's and his own final resting place to be clearly purchased, owned by him. The same principle, look how beautiful this is. The same principle applies to marriage. And that's why there's the correlation. Because even though, look how amazing, even though 40 days before a man is conceived, a boy is conceived, what happens? The Talmud in Masechet Sotah, the first page, tells us there's a bat kol. A bat kol means a heavenly voice that announces that this baby is going to marry, this boy is going to marry this girl, even before they're created. So if they were already announced and set for each other, what's the purpose of the kiddushin? What's the purpose of even getting the marriage? They're set for each other. What's the difference? Like Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was promised this land. Why does he need to go and buy it? Why does a man need to go acquire this woman? It was already promised to him by the bat kol, by the heavenly voice. Comes Reb Leib and says, because the chatan still needs to go and acquire the wife through kiddushin, through betrothal, as the Torah says to. He needs to, you know what you're doing then? You are announcing and publicizing with this kiddushin that she is consecrated to you and now prohibited to any other men. This is the true meaning of kadosh, hence kiddushin. It means she is now set aside, consecrated to this man, establishing and fortifying themselves as man and wife, husband and wife. So again, what's the correlation? The correlation is, yes, really, but Avraham Avinu did not need to pay for it and buy it, but he wanted to make sure to make it known to everybody that it belongs to him. So too, a wife is already announced to be married to her husband. He still needs to go and acquire it to announce and make it clear to all that she is designated clearly and specifically to him. Second one. Now I think, in my opinion, the most meaningful out of all, although those two were absolutely amazing, I want to share Reb Leib's third correlation between this and why, out of anywhere else in the Torah, the Talmud chose this specific episode, this section of the verb of lakach, to take, to acquire, from the story of Avraham Avinu acquiring the burial plot. Rashi tells us what Me'arat HaMachpelah means. Why is it called literally a double cave? And Rashi tells us that the cave signifies the doubles and the sets that are buried there. At first we have Adam and Chava, then we have Avraham and Sarah, Yitzhak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. This is what Rashi tells us, and that's what's called the double cave, because there are sets and doubles that are buried there. This week's Torah portion happens to be the first time that our Torah mentions anything about burial. Right, until now, Hevel passed away, Adam and Chava, Noach. It just says that they passed and how old they were when they passed, but it does not say anything about a eulogy or a burial ceremony, nothing at all. The idea, this is quite deep, Reb Leib says, the idea of man's everlasting existence, not man, I'm saying humanity's, the idea of a human being, and specifically a Jew's everlasting existence after death, is connected to the concept of burial. Because even though Sarah Imenu passed away, it was still necessary for her to attend to her needs as required according to Jewish law, to eulogize her, to bury her, to mourn the 7 days immediately after burial, then the 30 days, and then the entire year. This all, Reb Leib says, serves as a proof that when one is buried, we believe that they will eventually rise during the resurrection, during Tchiyat HaMetim. Because if not, we wouldn't care where they're buried. We wouldn't care to go visit them. Apparently, if someone passes away, it should be the end. No, but we go back after a week, after a month, every year. The place of burial matters a lot. From here, Reb Leib says we can realize a tremendous principle. And this is so powerful, so meaningful, so deep, so important. He says that the fact that a man acquires a wife, he's actually has to realize that there are repercussions not just in this lifetime, those repercussions extend even after death. Meaning, Me'arat HaMachpelah shows us, the place of burial of the patriarchs shows us that our patriarchs and matriarchs were couples not only in this world, but also in the world to come. Acquiring a wife, Reb Leib says, is not like acquiring anything else, any other item or possession in this world. God forbid we could ever think that. All possessions in this world belong to an individual while they're alive, and upon death, the ownership of that item passes on to their inheritors, namely their children. However, this acquisition that a man does by acquiring his wife, as defined by the Torah, is not just a physical one. It's a spiritual one that connects their souls forever, way beyond just this world. This teaches us a great and important lesson in life, that practically speaking, a husband and wife, a couple, should be buried together after 120, but we should always plan that we should be buried next to our spouses, because we were not only partners in this world, we are also partners forevermore in the world to come, in the time of Mashiach, in the time of the resurrection. Once we are betrothed, we are one forever. So as a conclusion, to sum up this part of tonight's class, Reb Leib gave us 3 different connections or reasons why the acquiring of a man to his wife is connected to Avraham Avinu acquiring the burial plot for his wife. Number 1, we said that they're both taking back something, right? A man is taking back the woman from the rib that was taken away from him, and the earth is taking back the dust that was taken to create mankind, taking back. So there's that connection. Secondly, we explained that betrothal and that connection is done even though she already belongs to him, even though the land already belonged to Abraham, to make it known so there's no disputes or question, there was still an act of acquiring needed. That was the connection. And the third connection Reb Leib gave us was that marriage is an everlasting bond during one's life and even after. So the two should be buried together to prove this everlasting connection. Now, the lesson that I would like to take out of this Reb Leib, very meaningful. It was a very deep concept that he was sharing with us, is that, and this is a question we all have to ask ourselves, how do we view our marriage? Do we view it as a mere physical bond, a roommate, maybe even your partner in raising your kids and spoiling your grandchildren? If she knows how to control the credit cards, maybe help you acquire wealth and fame, maybe. Is that how you look at your spouse? Or vice versa? Or do you look at your spouse as something way more than that? Yes, all of that's important. You need to be partners in raising your children, raising them properly. And yes, of course, acquiring wealth in order to support your family, 100%. And yes, there's obviously a physical bond and connection. And there are good times and bad times that are all shared together. But do you just look at it and leave it as that? Or do you look at it as a much spiritual partnership? One that you share in this world to fulfill your mission. Your mission is not your mission. Your mission is your mission and your wife's mission. It's not just your mission, it's your mission and your husband's mission. It's together, it's that partnership in this world so that it can continue in the world to come. This is a question we all need to ask ourselves. And if the answer is the first of the options, well, I guess it's never too late to reevaluate and never too late to start putting priorities in order and focusing on how to build together with your spouse that strong, not only physical connection, but spiritual connection. And hopefully the answer is the latter of the two options, and we could keep on focusing on that mission, on that spiritual growth, that combination of physical and spiritual growth and closeness and bond to fulfill our missions, B'ezrat Hashem. I had a question here typed in. I'll answer that before we move on to the next part. Great question. What happens if a couple divorces? So obviously, I've never seen it happen. You could correct me if anyone's seen otherwise. If a man and woman were married and they got divorced, I don't think they're buried together. I've never seen them buried together. You know, maybe in the same cemetery because the children, if there's children, they'd like to go visit them. But generally speaking, a husband and a wife who were divorced, they sever that physical, but also that spiritual connection and bond between them. And therefore, they are going their own ways, and I guess they're encouraged to find their true or another soulmate. It's a big topic. We're not going to get into that now. Which one was the right soulmate? Now comes another question, also just typed in. Thank you, Yasmin. What happens if, God forbid, one of the two, Joel, funny one, I saw that. What happens if one of the two pass away at, I guess, a younger age and the other one remarries? So that gets a little complicated, I guess, with the children from one side and the other side. But ideally, they should be buried all together. Now, a little bit of a separation, not a little bit of a separation, but in some way, our souls are so complicated that there is room for it to be shared in such a scenario of when one passes away before the other. There's still a spiritual connection over there. And that spiritual connection will continue in the world to come. But it doesn't mean that a new spiritual connection through a physical one in this world cannot be formed. And that's why a woman can only remarry to another man if her husband divorced her, or if it's clear and it's obvious and there's proof that her husband passed away. Because that physical bond cannot have a physical and spiritual connection with another man at the same time while the man is still alive. Okay, so I hope I answered the questions, and we'll move on to the next part of tonight's class. But again, the point was, again, to go back to our marriages, go back to our lives and reevaluate, are we growing spiritually together as a couple? And, well, are we growing physically together as a couple? That shouldn't be taken for granted either. But also, are we growing spiritually together as a couple, understanding that our souls are connected and they're going to be connected even in the world to come?